The night was cold and quiet outside the tall glass office building. Most lights inside were already off, but a few floors still glowed softly. Daniel walked out of the main door, tired after a long day of work. He adjusted his coat and looked at his watch. It was late, and the city streets were slowly emptying. Cars passed by, their lights flashing like tired eyes. Daniel was used to this routine: work, late nights, silence. As he walked toward the gate, something made him slow down. Near the corner of the building, close to the trash bins, a woman sat on the ground. She was wrapped in an old coat that was too thin for the cold. Her hair was messy, her shoes broken, and a small bag rested beside her. She looked homeless. Most people passed her without even turning their heads. Some looked away quickly, as if afraid. Daniel stopped. He did not know why, but his feet refused to move. He watched her quietly for a moment. She was not begging. She was not shouting or holding a sign. She simply sat there, hands folded, eyes calm but tired. There was something different about her silence. Daniel walked closer. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The woman looked up. Her eyes were sharp and clear, not empty like Daniel expected. She gave a small nod. "I am fine," she said softly. Her voice was calm, polite, and steady. Daniel was surprised. He had expected fear or desperation, but he heard none. "It's very cold," he said. "Do you need anything?" She thought for a moment. "Just something warm to eat," she replied. "If it's not too much trouble." Daniel smiled. "It's not trouble." He pointed to a small cafe across the street that was still open. "Wait here. I'll be back." When he returned, he handed her a hot soup and a piece of bread. She accepted it carefully, as if it was something precious. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to do this." Daniel shrugged. Sometimes people do things because they want to, not because they have to. She smiled at that. It was a small smile, but it reached her eyes. As she ate, Daniel noticed how neatly she held the spoon, how calm her movements were. She did not rush. She did not act ashamed. "My name is Daniel," he said. "Sarah," she replied. They sat in silence for a few seconds. The wind passed between the buildings, carrying city sounds far away. Daniel felt strange. He was talking to a homeless woman, yet it felt more natural than many conversations he had at work. "Do you work here?" Sarah asked, looking at the tall building. "Yes," Daniel said. "I work upstairs. Office job." She nodded slowly. "Big place. Big people." Daniel laughed softly. "Big egos too." Sarah smiled again. "That happens when people forget where they came from." Her words surprised him. "You sound like you know a lot about that." Sarah looked down at her soup. "I've seen many sides of life," she said quietly. Daniel felt a strange pull toward her story, but he did not ask. He did not want to push. Instead, he looked at the building again. "There's an office party tomorrow night," he said without thinking. Sarah looked at him, surprised. "A party?" "Yes," Daniel said. "Food, music, people pretending to be happy." He paused, then added, "Would you like to come?" The words hung in the air. Even Daniel was shocked at himself. He had no idea why he said it. Sarah stared at him, confused. "Me?" she asked. "To your office party?" "Yes," Daniel said. "I mean, if you want. No pressure." Sarah looked away for a moment. The city lights reflected in her eyes. She slowly reached into her coat pocket and touched something inside, then pulled her hand back out. "That's very kind," she said. "But are you sure?" Daniel nodded. "Everyone deserves to be invited somewhere." She studied his face, as if searching for a joke or a trick. Finding none, she gave a gentle smile. "All right," she said. "I will come." Daniel felt a strange mix of relief and fear. He imagined the looks on his co-workers' faces. He imagined the whispers, the laughter. But he also felt something else, certainty. "I'll meet you here tomorrow evening," he said. Sarah nodded. "I'll be here." As Daniel walked away, he looked back once more. Sarah was still sitting there, finishing her soup, calm and quiet. He had the feeling that this simple meeting would change something. He did not know what, but he felt it deep inside. That night, Daniel could not sleep. And across the city, Sarah sat under the dim light, holding something tightly in her pocket, a secret that would soon shock everyone. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a strange feeling in his chest. His mind went back to the cold night, the quiet woman, and the words he had spoken without thinking. "Would you like to come?" Now, in the bright light of day, the idea felt risky. He rubbed his face and sighed. But deep inside, he knew he would not take the invitation back. At work, the office was loud and busy. Keyboards clicked, phones rang, and people laughed near the coffee machine. Daniel sat at his desk, trying to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting. He imagined Sarah walking into the office party. He imagined the looks, the jokes, the judgment. His stomach tightened. During lunch break, one of his co-workers, Mark, leaned over his desk. "Hey, Daniel," he said with a grin. "You ready for the big party tonight?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I guess." Mark laughed. "Guess. Come on, man. Free food, music, important people. What's not to like?" Daniel hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I invited someone different." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" Daniel took a breath. "She's homeless." The laughter stopped. Mark stared at him. "You're joking, right?" "No," Daniel said quietly. "I'm serious." Within minutes, the story spread. People gathered, whispering and laughing softly. Some shook their heads. Others looked at Daniel like he had lost his mind. "Are you trying to get fired?" one woman asked. "This is an office party, not a shelter," another said. Daniel felt his face grow hot, but he stayed calm. "She's a person," he replied. "And she deserves respect." Later that day, Daniel's manager called him into the office. The man sat behind his desk, arms crossed. "Daniel," he said firmly, "I heard about your invitation." Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir." "This party is important," the manager said. "Clients, executives, the CEO himself may attend. I don't want any embarrassment." Daniel swallowed. "I understand, sir. But I don't think kindness is embarrassing." The manager sighed. "Just make sure there are no problems." Daniel left the office feeling heavy but determined. He knew people were watching him now, waiting for him to fail. Meanwhile, across the city, Sarah sat in a small public bathroom, washing her hands carefully. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was tired, but her eyes were calm. She took a small cloth from her bag and cleaned her shoes the best she could. She did not have much, but she had dignity. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple invitation card Daniel had written on a piece of paper. She smiled faintly. Then her fingers touched something else, a ring, old but elegant. She closed her hand around it and whispered to herself, "Not yet." As evening came, Daniel stood near the office entrance, nervous and unsure. People in fine clothes walked past him, laughing. The music started inside. He kept looking at the door. Then, from across the street, he saw her. Sarah walked slowly toward the building. She looked clean, calm, and composed. Her clothes were still simple, but she held herself with quiet confidence. Daniel felt his heart beat faster. She had come. And inside the building, the party was about to begin, but no one knew that one invitation was about to change everything. The office party was in full swing. Soft music filled the large hall, and warm lights reflected off glass walls and polished floors. Tables were covered with expensive food, and people moved around in fine suits and dresses, laughing loudly. It was a night meant to impress. Daniel stood near the entrance, his hands slightly shaking. He kept looking toward the door, waiting. Every time someone entered, his heart jumped, then sank. His co-workers passed by, giving him curious looks. Some smiled in a mocking way, others whispered behind his back. Daniel tried to ignore them, but the pressure grew with every passing minute. Then he saw her. Sarah stood just outside the glass doors. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. The bright lights inside reflected on the glass, making the hall look like another world. She adjusted her coat and stepped forward. The security guard stopped her. "This is a private event," he said, looking her up and down. "I'm invited," Sarah replied calmly. Her voice was soft but confident. The guard frowned. "Invited by who?" Before she could answer, Daniel rushed forward. "She's with me," he said quickly. "I invited her." The guard looked confused, then doubtful, but stepped aside. Sarah nodded politely and walked in. The moment she entered, the room changed. Conversation slowed. Laughter softened. Eyes turned toward her. Some people stared openly. Others leaned toward each other, whispering. Daniel felt the weight of their judgment. "She doesn't belong here," someone murmured. "Is this a joke?" another whispered. Sarah walked beside Daniel, her steps calm and steady. She did not lower her head. She did not rush. She looked around with quiet curiosity, as if she was observing everything, not afraid of it. Daniel led her toward a table. "I'm sorry about this," he said quietly. "People can be unkind." Sarah finished gently. "It's all right. I've seen worse." They stood near the food table. A waiter passed by and offered drinks but skipped Sarah without even looking at her. Daniel noticed and felt anger rise in his chest. He took 2 glasses himself and handed one to her. "Thank you," Sarah said, meeting his eyes. Nearby, a group of employees laughed loudly. One of them pointed towards Sarah. "Did you see her shoes?" he whispered, not caring who heard. Another added, "Why would anyone bring her here?" Daniel clenched his fists. He wanted to speak, to defend her, but Sarah gently touched his arm. "Let them talk," she said softly. "Words show people's hearts." The manager walked past and stopped when he saw Sarah. His smile faded. "Daniel," he said in a low voice, "can I speak with you?" Daniel followed him a few steps away. "This isn't appropriate," the manager said. "People are watching." Daniel replied firmly, "They should watch how they treat others." The manager shook his head and walked away, clearly annoyed. Sarah stood alone for a moment. She looked around the hall, her eyes moving from face to face. There was no fear in them, only quiet observation. She paused near a wall where company photos were displayed. Her gaze lingered on one picture longer than the rest. Daniel returned and noticed. "Do you like it?" he asked. "Yes," she replied slowly. "I've seen this place before, just not like this." Daniel looked at her, confused, but before he could ask, the lights dimmed slightly. The music lowered. A voice spoke through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "we are honored tonight. Our CEO will be joining us shortly." The room buzzed with excitement. People straightened their clothes, fixed their smiles, and moved closer to the stage area. At that moment, Sarah froze. Her fingers tightened around her glass. Her face changed, just for a second, but Daniel noticed. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Sarah took a slow breath. "Yes," she said. "I think it's time." Daniel felt a chill run through him. Time for what? The doors at the far end of the hall opened. Security stood straight. Everyone turned their heads. The CEO was about to enter. And Sarah's secret was closer than ever to being revealed. The CEO had not yet entered, but the atmosphere in the hall had already changed. Whispers and stares followed Sarah wherever she walked. Some employees whispered cruel jokes, while others shook their heads in disbelief. "Look at her shoes," one woman muttered to her friend, pointing discreetly. "Why would anyone bring a homeless woman to a party?" another laughed softly. Sarah walked calmly, unbothered by their remarks. She did not flinch, did not shrink, and did not respond. Her eyes scanned the room with quiet observation, and Daniel could see a strange strength in her posture. She was like a calm river flowing through a storm. Daniel stayed by her side, trying to shield her from the gossip and mockery. But even he could feel the weight of the judgment pressing down on her. Every laugh, every whisper, seemed louder than the music and the chatter. He felt guilty. He worried he had made a mistake by bringing her here. A waiter passed by, carrying a tray of drinks, and deliberately skipped Sarah. Daniel's anger rose, but he swallowed it. Sarah placed her hand gently on his arm and whispered, "Let them show their hearts. It does not touch mine." Daniel looked at her in awe. She was not afraid, but he realized how vulnerable she truly was. People were judging her for something she could not control, her appearance, her clothes, her shoes. And yet, she remained calm, composed, and unshaken. Just then, the office manager walked up. His face was stern. "Daniel," he said quietly, pulling him aside, "this is inappropriate. You can't have her here. This is an important night, and your actions are causing a scene." Daniel looked back at Sarah. She was standing near a corner, quietly watching the crowd. Her eyes were focused, calm, and somehow unafraid. He squared his shoulders and said firmly, "She belongs here. She has every right to be here, just like everyone else." The manager frowned, clearly frustrated, but he said nothing more and walked away. Meanwhile, a few employees decided to make a cruel joke. They offered Sarah a plate of leftover food and whispered, "Here, this is what you deserve." Sarah took the plate politely, but she did not eat. Instead, she looked at them with a calm, steady gaze. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice soft but carrying authority. The employees froze, caught off guard by her dignity. Daniel felt a surge of pride. Despite being mocked and humiliated, Sarah had not lowered herself. She had remained respectful, calm, and strong. He realized that her strength was not just in her words, but in the quiet way she carried herself. Then, the microphone crackled, and an announcement came through. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our CEO." The room fell silent. The music lowered. Conversations stopped. Everyone straightened their clothes and fixed their smiles. Daniel felt Sarah stiffen beside him. Her calm composure faltered just slightly. She touched a small object hidden in her pocket, her fingers trembling for the first time. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Daniel asked quietly. Sarah looked at him, her eyes shining with determination. "I've waited a long time for this," she said softly. "It's time they see the truth." Daniel's heart pounded. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. Security straightened. People turned their heads, curiosity and excitement mixing with surprise. The CEO stepped into the room. All eyes were on him. He was tall, confident, and commanding. People immediately stood, expecting a grand speech or a powerful display. Sarah froze for a moment, her breath caught in her chest. Daniel noticed it. Something inside him shifted. He realized that tonight would not just test Sarah, it would reveal a truth that no one in the room could have anticipated. The whispers, the stares, the mocking laughs, all of it was about to come to a dramatic halt. And at that moment, the entire office waited, unaware that the woman they had mocked would soon shock everyone in the room. The room was silent now. All eyes were on the CEO as he walked confidently toward the center of the hall. People straightened their backs, smiles frozen, and whispers stopped mid-air. Daniel stood next to Sarah, his hands slightly trembling, unsure of what would happen next. Then the CEO stopped in front of Sarah. He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes widening slightly. He did not speak immediately, and the tension in the room grew so thick it felt heavy. People shifted nervously in their seats, unsure of what was happening. "Sarah," the CEO said finally, his voice low but clear. Sarah straightened, her calm composure never leaving her face. She looked up at him and simply nodded. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Daniel felt it in his chest as if the air had been sucked out. The employees whispered to one another, trying to make sense of the scene. Some covered their mouths, others stared wide-eyed. The CEO stepped closer. "It's been a long time," he said softly, almost to himself. Then he turned to the crowd. "Everyone, meet Sarah, my wife." The room froze. Some people dropped their forks, some stuttered, and a few simply could not believe what they were hearing. Whispers turned into shocked murmurs. A homeless woman? At the office party? The CEO's wife? It seemed impossible. Sarah remained calm, serene, and dignified. She did not blush, flinch, or show fear. Her eyes scanned the room, and for the first time, everyone saw her strength. This was not just a woman who had fallen on hard times. She was someone who had chosen to hide her identity, to observe, and to teach a lesson. Daniel's mouth went dry. He had invited her thinking he was doing a kind act, not realizing the truth behind her presence. He felt both pride and awe. She had accepted his invitation with grace, but what she was about to reveal would leave a mark on everyone present. The CEO cleared his throat and addressed the crowd. Sarah wanted to see how people treat someone without wealth, status, or power. She has chosen to remain anonymous to observe honesty, kindness, and true character. People in the room looked guilty. Some of the employees who had mocked her earlier now lowered their heads. Daniel noticed their shame. Sarah's calm dignity had exposed not only the kindness of a few, but the cruelty of many. Then Sarah spoke. Her voice was soft, yet it carried authority. "I came here not to punish anyone," she said. "I came to show that respect and kindness are the true measures of a person. Some of you laughed, some ignored, some mocked, but a few of you treated me with honesty and compassion. And those are the people who matter." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He realized she had been testing everyone, but the most important thing was that she had trusted him. His small act of kindness, the invitation, the defense, had not gone unnoticed. The CEO nodded and smiled at Daniel. You, Daniel, have shown what true courage and honesty look like. You treated Sarah with respect, even when everyone else doubted her. That is why you are someone to be proud of. Sarah extended her hand to Daniel. Thank you, she said, softly. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world. The room remained in stunned silence. No one could move, speak, or process what had just happened. The homeless woman they had mocked was the CEO's wife, a woman of power, intelligence, and dignity. And the lesson she had come to teach was clear: wealth and status do not define character, kindness does. From that moment, everything changed. The whispers of mockery turned into murmurs of admiration. Employees who had doubted Daniel now looked at him with respect. And Sarah, she stood tall, calm, and unshaken, the quiet hero of the night. Daniel realized that his simple act of kindness had not only made a difference in her eyes, but it had also changed the way the entire office viewed themselves and each other. The $5 invitation, the polite defense, the small gesture of respect, it all had led to this moment. And everyone in that room would remember it forever. The CEO stepped aside and let Sarah take the center of attention. She smiled, not arrogantly, but warmly. Tonight, she said, is about more than a party. It is about honesty, kindness, and courage. Remember that. And let it guide you, not your status, wealth, or position. The office erupted in applause, some hesitant, some heartfelt. Daniel clapped too, feeling overwhelmed but proud. For the first time, he understood the real power of kindness, and the strength of a woman who could teach a billionaire and an entire office a lesson they would never forget. The applause slowly died down, leaving a heavy silence in the hall. Every eye was on Sarah, the woman who had just revealed herself as the CEO's wife. The atmosphere was thick with shock, embarrassment, and awe. People who had whispered cruel jokes earlier now stared at their shoes, ashamed. Daniel felt a mix of relief and nervousness. The hardest part was over, but he knew there was still more to come. Sarah took a deep breath. I did not come here to punish anyone, she said softly, her voice calm but commanding. I came to show the truth. How we treat people without wealth, without status, without power, that is what matters. Not titles. Not money. Not appearances. The employees looked around, realizing the truth in her words. Some of the executives who had laughed earlier could not meet anyone's gaze. Daniel saw a few hands fidget nervously, mouths opening and closing, but no words came. The CEO stepped forward. Sarah is right. Some of you have shown kindness. Others have shown cruelty. And all of it has consequences. He paused and scanned the room. Those who mocked or insulted her will face formal warnings. Some actions are unacceptable and cannot be ignored. Respect and dignity are not optional here. They are mandatory. A few employees turned pale, realizing they were being singled out. Daniel felt a quiet satisfaction. The injustice he had witnessed earlier was finally being addressed. Then Sarah looked directly at Daniel. And you, Daniel, she said with a small smile, you showed courage. You invited me, defended me, and treated me with respect when no one else did. You did not seek attention or reward. You acted with honesty and heart. That is rare. Daniel's throat tightened. He had not expected praise. All he had done was the right thing. But hearing it from Sarah, from the CEO's wife, meant more than words could express. Because of your actions, Sarah continued, we will be starting a program inside the company to help those in need. People who are struggling, overlooked, or forgotten will have opportunities to improve their lives. And Daniel, you will be part of it from the very beginning. The room stirred with murmurs. Employees were amazed. Daniel felt a mix of pride and humility. He realized that his small gesture, the invitation, the kindness, had led to something much bigger than himself. Sarah then turned back to the entire audience. This is more than a party. It is a lesson. How you treat the least among us shows who you truly are. Remember that. Carry it with you in your work, in your life, and in your heart. Some people in the room quietly nodded. Others whispered apologies to one another. The mood shifted from embarrassment to reflection. Even those who had been skeptical could not ignore the truth in her words. Daniel felt a warm hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see Sarah smiling at him. Thank you again, she said softly. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world. The CEO stepped aside, allowing Sarah to move among the employees. She shook hands, spoke quietly, and even laughed gently with a few of them. Daniel watched as the entire company slowly transformed in front of him. People who had judged, mocked, and doubted were now humbled and thoughtful. By the end of the evening, Daniel realized something important. His simple act of kindness had created ripples far larger than he had imagined. Not only had he defended a woman who deserved respect, but he had also inspired change in an entire office. The lessons of honesty, courage, and compassion would not be forgotten. As the party ended, Daniel walked out into the cool night air, feeling lighter than he had in years. Sarah had taught him, and the company, a lesson that money and status could never buy. True power came from kindness, integrity, and the courage to do the right thing. And for Daniel, that night marked the beginning of something new. A future where he could make a real difference, where his actions could inspire others, and where he knew that one small act of courage could change lives forever. The next morning, the office felt different. People who had arrived with whispers and judgment now walked quietly, thinking about Sarah's words from the night before. The atmosphere had changed, respect replaced mockery, and awareness replaced ignorance. Daniel noticed the subtle shift, and a quiet smile formed on his face. He had no idea that this single night would mark the beginning of a completely new chapter in his life. Sarah arrived at the office early, not in fancy clothes, but in simple attire that matched her quiet dignity. She moved through the office with a calm confidence, speaking gently to employees, shaking hands, and offering smiles. Her presence was commanding, not through wealth or power, but through integrity and grace. Daniel met her near the entrance. "Good morning," he said, a little nervous. "Good morning," she replied warmly. "Are you ready for today?" Daniel nodded. "I think so. I'm still trying to understand everything that happened last night." Sarah chuckled softly. "Sometimes, understanding comes later. Right now, what matters is action. We have work to do, real work that changes lives." Together, they walked into the office conference room where plans were being made for a new charitable program. Sarah had created a foundation inside the company to help families in need, provide education for children, and give opportunities to those overlooked by society. Daniel had been given the responsibility to help manage the program, lead initiatives, and ensure that it truly helped people. As he reviewed files and spoke to employees, Daniel felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He remembered the small moment outside the office, the night he had met Sarah, offered her soup, and invited her to the party. It seemed so small, yet it had led to this. A single act of kindness had changed not only one life but many. Weeks passed, and the program grew. Families received assistance, children returned to school, and the community started to flourish. Employees who had once been careless with their words and actions now worked with thoughtfulness and respect. Daniel saw firsthand how Sarah's lesson was creating lasting change. One afternoon, Daniel and Sarah visited a family whose home had been rebuilt through the program. Children laughed in the yard, playing without fear or hunger. The parents hugged Daniel and Sarah, tears in their eyes, grateful for a second chance at life. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest, a satisfaction deeper than any promotion or salary he had ever received. "See what your kindness started?" Sarah asked softly. Daniel nodded. "I never imagined it would be this big." She smiled. "Sometimes, the smallest actions have the largest impact. You treated me with respect when no one else did. That courage sparked change, and change spreads." Later that evening, Daniel walked home, thinking about the journey he had been on. He realized that real wealth was not measured by money or power, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others. He thought of Sarah, the woman who had appeared homeless yet carried wisdom, dignity, and strength, and knew he had learned lessons that would stay with him forever. Back at the office, Sarah sat quietly in her office, looking out at the city lights. She remembered the first time she had met Daniel, the polite words, the gentle defense, and the simple act of inviting her in. That small act had changed everything, not just for Daniel, but for the entire company, the people they were helping, and even herself. The camera pans out, families smiling, children playing, employees working respectfully, Daniel guiding projects with dedication, and Sarah watching silently but proudly. The city glows with the sunset, symbolizing hope, change, and the lasting impact of one courageous act.